back to Around the NHL presented by Chase. Michelle Gingras alongside Anson Carter, and we now welcome in Hockey Night in Canada and Sportsnet host David Amber. David, thanks so much for joining the show today.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to see you.
Yes, sir. Here we go.
Before we dive in and preview those round one matchups, the Rangers obviously with the #1 pick in the 2020 NHL draft. We saw your tweet. Alexis Lafreniere has never been to New York, but he's excited to visit the Big Apple. I mean, what else can you just tell us about this player and maybe compare his game to someone who's currently in the NHL?
Wow. Well, first of all, congratulations to the New York Rangers because the luck is on their side. I had a chance to interview Rangers GM Jeff Gorton after, and I said, what's the deal? You move up from 6th to 2nd and get capital last year. Now you win the draft lottery. And he says they're carrying around a fallen police officer's badge from the NYPD, and that's been their good luck charm. And it's a nice tribute to him and his family as well. They're getting a special player. I mean, by all accounts, they're getting, I don't know if we'd call him a McDavid generational player, but by all accounts, a franchise player. You've got to remember, he's the first person since Sidney Crosby to win back-to-back CHL Player of the Year awards. He was averaging more than 2 points per game in the CHL in the Quebec League. This guy's got a fantastic playmaking sense. He likens his game to Patrick Kane. That's who he tries to mold his game around. Imagine adding a guy like Kane onto a line potentially with another great sniper in Panarin. I mean, that would be an absolutely deadly combo. So they have the opportunity now to add another franchise player. And remember a couple of years ago, Jeff Gorton sent out that message to the season ticket holders, you know, we're building something here. You got to be patient. Well, now I think that's accelerated on a drastic level with what's happened in the last 2 draft lotteries. So really big news for the Rangers. By all accounts, he's a great player, and a lot of people are comparing him to Jonathan Huberdeau down in Florida.
Well, you mentioned that little thing he's carrying around. That's Officer Stephen McDonald, who just passed away recently. The Rangers actually have an award named after him, and it's the hardest working player for the New York Rangers. So I could see why that passed along a little bit of good luck. This is around the NHL. It's not around the New York Rangers. But as you can see, DA, I'm wearing my New York Rangers garb. I could be wearing a lot of different shirts, playing for a lot of different teams. But what's it like in Toronto right now? I know we're talking first overall draft pick, the lottery, but what's it like Toronto, Columbus? People in Toronto, you know, you win a playoff game and there's a celebration up and down Yonge Street, which is the main strip in Toronto. What are people saying in Toronto after that loss?
What a roller coaster ride, right? Like Game 3, the Leafs are up 3-0. They have seemingly the series in a stranglehold and let it slip away. Game 4, I mean, the series is done. 3-0, 4 minutes left. The Leafs come back and win in overtime in the most dramatic and unpredictable finish you can imagine. And then there was this anticipation and this optimism going into Game 5. All right, the Leafs got the momentum. They're going to move on. And then Columbus just suffocated them with their stifling defense and great goaltending from Korpisalo. So the mood in Toronto is sort of what the mood's been like, Ace, for the last 53 years. You know, it's like, you know, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me 53 times, shame on me. You know, people really get their hopes up and they've been dashed. And this was a team that was built to have some playoff success. They weren't going up against the vaunted big bad Bruins. They weren't going up against the Washington Capitals as they had in the last 3 playoff runs. It was going up against a Columbus team without Panarin, without Duchesne, without Bobrovsky, a team that on paper, you know, the Leafs have a bunch of $11 million players. They were expected to get past them. So the mood a little bit somber in Toronto and back to the drawing board. And people are expecting a lot of big moves potentially coming from the Leafs this offseason as they try to really figure out a way to get that right group of players together to make you know, a bigger statement come playoff time.
I think it'll be a busy offseason for a lot of teams. Another team obviously suffering a very disappointing loss in the qualifier round was the Pittsburgh Penguins. No one expected to see them go out the way that they did. Anson and I were talking about it on the show yesterday. Just never really seemed like, you know, they got it going, the lethargic throughout all of those games. Is it an end of an era in Pittsburgh? Is that window for this current team closing?
You know what, Michelle, I wouldn't go that far. I think Jim Rutherford is a mastermind of making little tweaks here and there and making sure that he has a Stanley Cup contending team, knowing that Malkin's 34, knowing that Crosby just turned 33. It's not that it's closed. It's not that it's closed, but certainly, you know, it's closing. And I think he recognizes that. And I think it's incumbent on them to do what they can do this offseason to make sure that they can have another legitimate run or two with this nucleus. You still have Chris Letang. You have 2 great goaltenders. And maybe that's where they can pick up and solidify and find some more offensive parts is to move one of Tristan Jarry or Matt Murray. Who knows what they're contemplating right now. But I think there's a lot of great parts there. Very disappointing finish for them to lose to a 12 seed in Montreal. But even going in, what was one of the narratives? You guys, I'm sure, talked about this. You don't want to go up against CAREY Price, who could end up being that HART Trophy CAREY Price from a few years ago. And guess what? It was a HART Trophy CAREY Price in a vaunted defense. We called them on our show the Trident, right? Where you had Petrie and Weber and Sherratt were just so good and played them so hard. But it was surprising, like you said, holding Pittsburgh to 8 goals in that series was a shock to all of us. But I don't think the window's closed by a long shot. You never sleep on Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin. You just don't.
DA, I love hoops, so you might call it the Trident. I call it the Big Three. I know that usually referred to basketball, but I talk about the Big Three when it comes to hockey, that defensive core. You're talking about the Montreal Canadiens, but I want to talk about Price versus Hart. Carter Hart said that CAREY Price has been his idol ever since came into the National Hockey League. In his first game, he was actually nervous looking down the ice, seeing CAREY Price in net. How do you compare the matchups between both goaltenders, between the Flyers and the Montreal Canadiens in this series?
You know what? It's probably a dead heat. I mean, Carter Hart certainly hasn't had the professional success that CAREY Price has, but Carter Hart is the exact same style, very cerebral. He doesn't move a ton in his net. He's not one of those athletic goalies who's sliding post to post. He just always seems to be in the right place at the right time. He almost makes it look easy, just like CAREY Price. This is the goaltender the Flyers have been coveting since Ron Hextall, since Pelle Lindbergh, etc. This is their guy, and they feel, I think, on cloud 9, knowing they can play comfortably in front of him. They can make mistakes if they need to, knowing that he's a rock-solid goalie behind them. So I can't wait. That's one of the great storylines from that Flyers Habs series is the battle of 2 great goaltenders, one that's been there for a long time and one that's on the way up.
David, before I let you go, I just wanted to get both of your reactions to the hiring of Everett FitzHugh. He's the first Black team broadcaster in NHL history. He'll be the voice of the Seattle Kraken. You've both been trailblazers in this field from a broadcasting standpoint, but to be the voice of an NHL franchise, that's a pretty groundbreaking achievement.
I'll lead us off. I mean, I think it's great. It just shows that Seattle's trying to think differently. And it's not just about putting Black people on. It's about putting good people on. It doesn't matter what color you are. And this is a perfect example of Everett doing great work in Cincinnati, and now he's been given the opportunity. I've had the pleasure of watching DA on TV a lot longer than I've been on television. So you're talking about good people being put on. That's what it's all about. So I don't want people to talk about, well, you're just putting this guy on because he's Black. No, you're putting him on because he's great at what he does.
One correction to what Anson said, not a lot longer, just a couple of years longer, okay? Don't age me here, okay? I'm still pretty young. Yeah, I'm really happy for Everett too. I think this is great. And I really, hats off to Todd Lywicki, to Ron Francis and all the management group in Seattle, because they've made a concerted effort. Exactly what Anson said. It's not just, hey, let's find a minority, let's find someone who's diverse, put them on. It's about having qualified candidates and going the extra mile to say, if we can add diversity with qualified candidates, we're going to do that. Everett, he's got a great pedigree, went to Bowling Green University, where we've seen a lot of great hockey players come out of there, the Gary Galleys, the Kevin Biexas, the Mike Johnsons. We've had a lot of good NHL players come out of there. It's a good hockey community there. He's applying his trade down in Cincinnati. He's done a great job, and they identified him as someone who could be a good up-and-coming voice. I reached out to Everett, and he's on cloud 9 right now. He can't believe this is happening to him. And I think it's nice to see the game through a different lens, through a different set of eyes, and I think that's something the whole hockey community is embracing right now. So this is fantastic news, Michelle.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining the show. We loved having you on, and good luck throughout the rest of the playoffs.
Anytime. Enjoy the ride. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, DA. I need to find that Sportsnet feed too. I love watching you guys when I can.
Awesome.
Definitely. Always great stuff. All right, when we come back, EJ Raddick is joining the show. That's all when Around the NHL, presented by Chase Returns. Let's knock this out, guys. Seg 2.
Are we ready?
Sorry, hold on one sec. I'm going to just get my dog to calm down.